Hey everyone, it's Kino here. Thanks for joining this Yoga Sutra study course. Today's sutra is book number 1, Yoga Sutra number 34, which talks about the breath and how the mind can be calmed by controlling the breath. Bring your hands together, be very conscious of the breath. Keeping the eyes closed for a moment, be aware of your breath. Notice inhalation and exhalation. Notice the fluidity, the pace, the rhythm of your breath. And then gently allow your eyes to open. Good. So this sutra, Patanjali is talking all about the calming quality that controlling the breath has on the field of the mind. And Patanjali says by controlling or regulating the pace of your breath, as well as holding your breath, that these qualities or these practices can actually create a strength and steadiness of the mind, so that the mind sort of becomes calm when the breath is controlled. So let's take a look at the actual sutra. Pracchardana vidhāranāhyām prānasya. Pracchardana vidhāranāhyām prānasya. Good. So let's break this down word by word. Pracchardana, exhaling, or by controlling the pace and the rhythm of your exhalation. Pracchardana is the notion that you have conscious control over your breath, and by choosing the pace and the rhythm of your breath, you can create or have an effect on the state of arousal in the field of the mind. Pracchardana, vidhāranāhyām, retaining or holding the breath. So this is making reference to particular breathing practices, or what's sometimes known as pranayama, where you may inhale and hold the inhalation, or exhale and hold the exhalation. This is also the notion of extending and lengthening the pace of inhalation and exhalation. There's a good window, a good mirror into gazing at your emotional state. Patanjali is here tapping into a truth that is now proven by modern science, which is that the state of our arousal is intimately tied to how we are breathing. By controlling and regulating the breath, you can control and regulate the mind. Pracchardana vidhāranāhyām, then the last words, repeat after me. Va prānasya, va prānasya, va prānasya. Prānasya, the breath. So we're looking at not just retaining anything and not just controlling exhalation, but also controlling the pace of inhalation and exhalation, in other words, controlling your breath. Well, there's another saying that says, kale vatum kale chitam, which comes from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which is as the breath goes, so the mind goes, or so the mind follows. As our state of arousal, sort of our emotional state, is intimately tied to the breath. If you can grab hold of the breath wherever you are, you can regain the balance of your mind. To apply Patanjali's thesis, think back to the last time you were sobbing. I know it's not really a pleasant thing to think about, but just remember the last time you were really crying and you just let yourself sob. As you're crying, there's almost a hyperventilation. You're almost, the breath is getting really upset. And the same thing when you're angry. If you remember being angry, it's like you're panting. You're almost, you're mad, right? Or scared. If you were in a horror movie, I can't watch horror movies anymore. My mom loved horror movies when I was growing up, but my husband hates horror movies, so I don't watch horror movies anymore. You can't watch them alone, you want to be all scared by yourself. But that moment in the horror movie when, the hero's walking down the hall, door number 1 is safe, door number 2, there's a monster behind. Why do they always choose door number 2? We don't know. So that first, they're going up, the hero's there, door number 2, the breath. The breath is your window into your emotional state. Now think about the breath when you're relaxed, how long and deep it is when you're out by the beach and the breeze is blowing, or you're in a hammock and the breeze is blowing underneath you, not a care in the world. The breath is fluid and deep and steady. Or if you're in a deep state of meditation, the breath is refined and rarefied, just light, free, and easy. Your breath is a window into the subconscious mind, into the emotional body. Well, Patanjali is saying, hey, you don't need to be a victim to that. You can grab control over the breath. You can move into the breath and you can move into it and grab it under your conscious control. You can actually regain conscious control over your state of arousal. So if you notice yourself getting worked up, you can take a moment and say, you know what, here I go. I'm consciously breathing in, I'm consciously breathing out. Lengthening and extending the pace of inhalation and exhalation will allow you to retain a calm and balanced mind. As yoga practitioners, you already apply this when you're moving through the asana. You don't ever want to do asana divorced from conscious control over your breath, because sometimes the asanas stimulate a strong emotional response. And if you simply let your breath hyperventilate and you let yourself go off into these emotional states which are dramatic highs and devastating lows, then you're actually not applying Patanjali's technique of controlling the breath. Patanjali says that a way to create a calm and balanced mind is to regain control over the breath. This is a huge tenet that really holds up the whole foundation of the yoga practice. If you don't control your state of arousal, if you don't have conscious control over your breath, and you're just doing a bunch of poses, you may actually be making it worse in your emotional body. You may be practicing agitation. You may be practicing states of anxiety and fear and giving attention to that. So let it all go. Redirect your mind into the breath. Focus on conscious inhalation, conscious exhalation. Lengthen and steady the breath. If you've been taught pranayama techniques or breathing techniques that involve retaining or holding the breath, you can apply those too. It's best not to teach yourself pranayama techniques. It's best to really learn that from a teacher. So if you have the idea that you would like to experiment with controlling the breath, first get established in the asana practice and let there be a calm, long, steady breath in every pose. Let that be the beginning of your practice, and let that also be the end of your practice. So this really is the benchmark for how deep the yoga is going. I practiced for many years without really deep attention to the breath, and I can say that if you take that step and really focus on lengthening and deepening the breath, it will open up a whole level of spiritual realization in your practice. Your mind will begin to be more balanced, your life will begin to reflect that balance which is in your mind, and you'll have one tool that will never fail you. You'll have conscious control over your breath. And that's something that as you continue to practice will only get better. Let's say the sutra all together. Pracchardana vidhāranāhyām prānasya. Pracchardana vidhāranāhyām prānasya. Pracchardana vidhāranāhyām prānasya. Keep control over your breath, keep control over your mind. Let your mind be a balanced, calm, and harmonious reflection over the inflowing and outgoing tides of the breath on the calm shore of the ocean of your consciousness. Bring your hands together. Thank you so much for joining me on the spiritual tradition of yoga. Namaste.